Hello. Thank you for joining us tonight. Looks like some of you are still connecting, so we'll give it a minute here for everyone to get their audio connected. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It looks like I see some people on here that I've talked to on the phone. It's good to see so many faces and we also have a good number of people that have called in here, so that's nice to see. Thank you for being here tonight. The county hired CivicMic to assist with public engagement efforts in regards to the Rio Del Mar Flats pump station improvement project. And before we get into the meeting, I would like to quickly show you where you can find some information about the project. So if you haven't already been to civicmic.com/SCC for Santa Cruz County, we'll go ahead and show you what the main landing page looks like here. This page provides information about this project. You can see that there's a place here to take the survey if you haven't done so already. Many of you have. This is where you find information about our meetings. And you can also subscribe here. So what's being shown on the screen right there is all we need from you is your email address, your name, and your site address if you have that, and that will allow us to provide you with specific information in regards to this project and the formation proceedings. This is where we will send information out to you about even about the ballots being mailed. So signing up here will get you early access to all the information, and you won't have to come back to visit the site. You can just click directly on a link there. So if you haven't taken the survey, please do that. If you haven't signed up or subscribed to receive email updates, please do that as well. As you continue to scroll down on this main page, you'll see a direct link to, here you'll see the community participation map, which shows the boundaries of the proposed district, as well as pins for anyone who has participated in the survey. And here you can also click on your parcel. So as you select it there, you'll see your APN, your site address, city, and the total assessment that's proposed for your parcel there. So when you have a chance, come back and visit the website. There's a lot of useful information. As you scroll down from here, we go over the timeline for this project, for the proposed formation, as well as once you get a little bit further down, and there's a direct link there to ask questions, a link to latest news where you can find all the information that's been posted on the site, and as well as a link to the data center there that has a substantial amount of useful information about this project. So if you feel like anything that we're covering tonight, you have questions, you need more in-depth answers to, visit that we don't cover tonight, visit the website, look there, and then you can always just email us your questions, and we'll make sure to respond to the entire community on this site so everyone benefits from the questions that you're asking. Before we move to the presentation, I'd like to make sure that we respect everyone's time tonight and viewpoints. So we plan to keep this meeting to right around an hour. If you need to hop off and would like to come back and review the content that was shared tonight, the meeting will be recorded and shared on CivicMic.com. Give us a couple days to do that, and should be there by the end of the week. We will hold questions until the end of the meeting. So we want to get through all presentations because some of your questions may be answered in the next presentation. If you have questions, write them down so you don't forget them. And at the end, that's when we'll go over how we're going to take questions for this presentation. We want everyone to be able to hear the material that's being presented, and all participants will be muted throughout the presentation. Please respect others and stay on mute. If you unclick and you see that we keep putting you back on mute, that's intentional. The CivicMic public engagement process aims to gather feedback from various demographics with diverse values. We'd like to hear from all participants, and we will make every attempt to shield you from personal attacks or slander. So anyone using foul language or making personal attacks will be moved to a private meeting room by the moderator to regain their composure. You'll be allowed to return to the meeting, but if it continues, we'll remove you from the meeting and you won't be allowed to return. We don't anticipate this happening, but we share this information because we want you to know that your opinion is valuable to us, and we will not allow others to disrespect you for having a different viewpoint. So with all that being said, let's start tonight's presentation with a welcome from Sfrd. Zach?
Thanks, Danielle, and it's great to see everybody virtually again. I appreciate so many of you that participated in our last discussion on this virtually some months back, and I know many of you have also participated in the many community-based meetings we've had with the Rio Del Mar Improvement Association with this over the years. The good news is, unlike some of the previous meetings that were just discussing the problem and the approach to the solution, the county, as we'll be discussing tonight and we discussed previously, has been able to secure a significant amount of funding toward the construction of this project, and now we're moving toward the next stage of what that would look like. This is a nearly yearly issue for many of you, as you know, down there. The solution took a lot of resource agencies and a lot of work from the county to be able to come up with the best solution, both on the state and federal side. And we've come up with a solution that we're excited to present tonight, but also to have a discussion with you about what we need from you from an ongoing operations and maintenance standpoint. Additionally, in addition to that, we have taken as many, as Danielle had said earlier, all the questions that were asked at the previous community discussion. We tried to create an FAQ equivalent that you'll see at the bottom. We'll put up that website again in the chat for those of you that are able to view it in the chat, and we'll email it out for those who have reached out to us just to make sure that that's very well known. But we'll also be continuing to take the questions in tonight and answer them additionally, as Daniel mentioned, on that website. We want to make sure that we have as much transparency as possible, both in regards to what the costs proposed would be, and get as many of the questions answered as possible. So I'm always here if you need me at zach.friend@santacruzcounty.us or 454-2200. I'm going to hand it off to the county's project lead on this, who's our Assistant Director of Public Works, Kent Edler, and Kent's also been available for all of you answering questions. Kent, I'm going to hand it to you.
Good evening, everybody. Like Zach said, I'm Kent Edler, and I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Public Works. And I'm going to give a brief overview of the project to address the flooding issues in the Rio Del Mar Flats area. As you can see from this first slide, which is a picture taken along Aptos Beach Drive at Marina, looking northeast towards Treasure Island Drive, the Rio Del Mar area floods quite often. And this is what it looked like in January of this year. This type of flooding event and this is the type of flooding event that this project will address. Next slide, please. So why does the Rio Del Mar Flats flood? It's a combination of several factors. First, there are two outlet pipes that drain the whole Rio Del Mar Flats area into Aptos Creek. These pipes are located at the edge of at the Esplanade parking lot, as shown in the picture. In this picture, you'll also notice that there are two arrows pointing to two pipes. The pipe shown in the picture with the water coming out is the upper pipe, which releases water when the lower pipe, which is below the creek level in this picture, isn't functioning. In an ideal situation, due to hydraulics, the lower pipe would drain the area much faster. However, since the lower pipe is often below the creek water level, which can happen during high flow events or when a sandbar builds up, which essentially dams the creek, or a combination of high tide and storm surge, it often doesn't function. Additionally, sometimes the lower outlet pipe fills with sand, which prohibits flow. Next slide, please. So this project has been designed and will take water that would normally go to the outlets in Aptos Creek and redirect it to an outlet/drainage pit near the beach. And that's shown in this picture here. So I'll go into a little bit more detail. So the project includes replacement of storm drain lines on Aptos Beach Drive from Venetian to Stephen. And those are shown in the blue area. And the red dots are new manholes and inlets that would take in the water. A new pump station is proposed in the triangular area between Rio Del Mar Boulevard and Venetian across from Bailey Properties and the Pixie Deli, and that's shown in that kind of that yellow box there. And then from there, the stormwater would be pumped to an underground outlet, which has a manhole top, which is located on the beach across from Beach Drive in that small vegetated area, which is that approximately the location of that purple circle there. And I just want to note that the project is intended to address flooding for storm events up to the 10-year event. And the project is not intended to change the FEMA flood maps or address flooding in Aptos Creek or address any flooding due to sea level rise or storm surge. Next slide, please. So design is nearly complete, and we were lucky enough to receive approximately $600,000 flood mitigation grant from for the design from FEMA. We also feel very lucky to have received approximately $4.2 million in grants for the construction of the project, which was funded from FEMA, California Department of Office of Emergency Services, and the Department of Water Resources through an integrated regional water management program. It's about a $4.8 million project, and the remaining $600,000 that's not covered from grants will come from local funds that we have on hand. Next slide, please. So the project will require annual ongoing maintenance of the pump station and the drainage system, and that has an estimated cost of $121,000 annually. And there's not a funding source for this annual ongoing maintenance, and we can't build a project which we can't maintain. So that's why we're reaching out to the community with regards to the formation of an assessment district to pay for the maintenance. We've hired a consultant team to determine and develop an engineer's report regarding the costs per each parcel in the affected area. Also, I want to mention that we have the designer for the project, David Sims, who's here as well. So he can help answer any questions, and then his supervisor who oversees our stormwater management section, Rachel Fatui, she's here, she's on the call as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to our consultant team who can talk about the engineer's report and the assessment.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sarah Mayers with NBS. NBS is a consulting firm that was hired by the county to prepare the engineer's report and other documentation related to the formation of this benefit assessment district. My colleague Greg Garanzi is here with me as well. We both have over 20 years of experience forming assessment districts, as well as many other types of special financing districts. So we'll start out here tonight by giving you a little bit of background information and then move into the specifics related to this particular assessment. So on our agenda tonight is some legislative context. We'll look very specifically at the assessment engineering factors that were used to develop the assessment methodology contained in the engineer's report for this district. We'll look at the various benefit points, the cost estimate, and the assessment calculations, culminating with, the question everyone wants the answer to, which is what is my ongoing annual assessment, and then we'll give you a sense of what the next steps are in the process. Next slide. So in terms of the legislative context, there are a couple of pieces of information to give you some background on this topic. So I won't ask you to raise your hand, but some of you may remember voting on Proposition 13. Bianna, there's a little more content on that slide if you can pull that up. One more. You may also remember voting on Proposition 218 as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Benefit Assessment Act. Proposition 13 and 218 are some background information, and then the Benefit Assessment Act is the actual legislation that we're operating under with respect to the formation of the assessment district. Next slide. On Proposition 13, that was a measure put forward to voters in 1978. And that fundamentally changed how property taxes are collected in the state of California. So it limited the assessed valuation of your property to a 2% increase on an annual basis. So even if the value of your property in the real estate market increases by 10% year over year, we're in an environment right now, in fact, where values are increasing significantly. The assessed value or value that is the basis for your property taxes is limited to a 2% increase per year. It also said that there is a 1% cap on ad valorem property tax. Again, prior to Proposition 13, it used to be that property taxes could be set by an agency and that the amount could change from year to year based on what the agency's needs were. So Proposition 13 comes in and says, nope, we are limiting you to a 1% cap on the value of your property, and we're limiting the value increase to only 2% a year. So that fundamentally changed how local agencies in California receive revenue. And with that, there is no mechanism for local agencies to collect additional general taxes. Next slide, please. Proposition 218 comes to us in 1996, again, another voter-approved initiative. And that gives us very, very strict rules on benefit assessments and requires that each benefit assessment is supported by an engineer's report that is signed and stamped by a registered professional engineer. The engineer's report has to detail the general benefit as separate from the special benefit. General benefit is benefit from the improvements or services to the public at large. Special benefit is benefit that is conferred directly to property that is being assessed. So the engineer's report evaluates those two criteria, determines what the special benefits are, separates the general benefits, and then allocates the special benefit to each individual parcel within the assessment district according to the assessment methodology. Under Proposition 218, government property is not exempt. Every property, regardless of ownership, is assessed based on the benefit to that property from the improvements or services. The approval process for an assessment district is called a protest ballot proceeding. So we'll give you a little more detail on the schedule a little bit later in the presentation, but in general, the protest ballot proceeding means that each individual property owner, this is not a voter vote, but it is a property owner ballot. So each property owner receives a ballot in the mail. The ballot has all of the information along with a notice of public hearing, all of the information about the assessment district, how the assessment is calculated, what the criteria is, what the assessment amount is for your particular parcel. You then have the opportunity to cast your ballot in favor or in opposition. Once those ballots are returned, then they are tabulated. They are weighted according to the financial obligation of each individual ballot. So in terms of your ballot, if your assessment amount is $50 and your neighbor's assessment is $25, your ballot is worth twice as much in terms of the tabulation. So we add up the value of the assessment amount for the ballots returned in favor. We add up the value of the assessment amount for the ballots returned in opposition. This is a protest ballot proceeding, so we are looking to determine whether there's a majority protest. We determine that there is a majority protest if the ballot amount returned in opposition is greater than the ballot amount returned in favor. And by the same token, if the amount returned in favor is greater than the amount returned in opposition, we do not have a majority protest and we may proceed with the formation. Next slide. So I mentioned the Benefit Assessment Act of 1982 This is the specific legislation that we're operating under in terms of forming this assessment district. It was, as you might imagine, adopted by the legislature in 1982. It provides for the funding, a mechanism for the funding for maintenance and operation of drainage systems. It does require an engineer's report, and it requires that that engineer's report include the basis and schedule of assessment. One thing to note here is that this type of assessment district, this benefit assessment of 1982, it requires that the amount of the assessment, the amount that is determined to be levied to your parcel, is included on your property tax bill. So the manner of collection of this type of assessment is that this amount would show up on your regular property tax bill. It is not part of that ad valorem or value-based property tax that we talked about earlier with Proposition 13, but it's an add-on to that and would show up in typically a separate box on your property tax bill as an additional item, and it would say, you know, Rio Del Mar Flats Assessment District, and have that dollar amount added to your property tax bill. So you would have the opportunity to pay that in the same 2 installments that you pay your general property taxes. And if your property taxes are part of your impound account for your mortgage, they're just included with that. Next slide, please. With that background information, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, Greg Garanzi, to go over the very specific assessment engineering factors that we have evaluated for this district.
Thank you, Sarah. Pleasure to be with you all tonight. I'd like to take us through an overview on the process and factors that we've used to calculate the assessments. As Sarah mentioned, we're required to levy based on benefits. And for this project, we've identified 2 special benefits. Those are, first, the flood risk mitigation that's found in the flats area. And we've seen the photographs of the flooding in that area. And the project is intended to alleviate a measure of that flooding. As a result of alleviating the ponding, there's also a benefit provided for properties, the ability to access property to and from unimpeded by either road closures or delays as a result of the flooding events. So those are our 2 measures of benefit that we're working with. And then we evaluate each parcel based on its property characteristics to see how that property how we might measure the benefits against each and every parcel. And as was mentioned, we're legally required to levy all property without respect to ownership. And in the case of this assessment district, there is property owned by the state of California and the county that are being assessed for their benefit for the improvements and services. Also, as Sarah mentioned, we're required to identify and separate general from special benefits. And in that exercise, we've identified general benefits that accrue to the peripheral parcels of approximately 4.5%. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about our 2 types of benefit and the assignment of benefit points. So in the flood risk mitigation area, it follows that property will benefit based on their elevation. So the lower a parcel's elevation, the higher the flood risk. The higher a parcel's elevation, the lower the flood risk. In the case of the area in the flats, we have 3 different elevations, and we've assigned a benefit point to each of those elevations. So the highest elevation is going to receive 1 benefit point, the middle one, 1.5, and the lowest elevation, 2 benefit points. So that is, in general, the way we're measuring the benefit for the flood risk mitigation. Now to address the access benefits, the way we're measuring an access benefit is via trip generation studies, where every parcel land use type is evaluated to determine what its estimated trips for in and out of the property are going to be. And based on those relative trips generated by the parcels, they're assigned a benefit point. And there's a number of details that are taken into consideration for all these matters listed here on the slide, such as development status, land use type, and potentially building square footage. So next slide, please. We're going to talk about the costs for a moment. Kent described the overall project costs. I believe it's summed to about $5.4 million, which I have to applaud the county in their efforts in sustaining funds for that entire project cost. And again, the costs that we're discussing tonight are solely the maintenance and operation costs for these improvements. And so for the benefit of those on the phone, I'm going to read through some of the numbers here, so bear with me. Overall, our project costs are $120,664.76. We identified the general benefit percentage for peripheral parcels to be 4.57%. Therefore, that cost, which equals $5,459.78, is deducted from the project costs and must be paid from other revenue sources, not the property owners within the assessment district. That therefore leaves $115,204.98 to be assessed to the properties within the assessment district. Now, we just talked about the assignment of benefit points and some of the criteria used to assign the benefit points to each and every parcel. So what we do is, after we've evaluated each and every parcel, we add up all the benefit points within the district, which in this case is 969.8370 points. We divide that by the cost, or the cost is divided by the points, and then we get dollars per benefit point, which in the year that the cost estimate was created, which is the fiscal year 2020-21, those costs in that year's dollars is $118 and approximately 78 cents. Now, as Sarah mentioned, these assessments are going to be levied on the county secured property tax roll. The project itself is still under design/construction and will not be completed for a period of time. Therefore, the assessments will not be necessary right away. So we're proposing these assessment amounts for the 2022-23 fiscal year. There's an escalator that's applied annually to the maximum assessment amount. So for the succeeding fiscal year, 2022-23, the assessment amount per benefit point is $124.80. Next slide, please. So how do we calculate an individual parcel's assessment amount? Well, we take that parcel's individual total benefit points and we multiply it by the rate per benefit point. So fairly straightforward. Next slide, please. And just go ahead and give them all to me, Bianna. So I'm going to start with the leftmost column, which is titled SFRD with access only benefits. What that means is a single family residence, which is developed. So it's a developed single family residential parcel. This would characterize the properties along Beach Drive, where they're not subject to receiving the benefit of the mitigation of the flood risk, but they do get the benefit of now having clear and free access continually back and forth to their property, which includes their own personal access, service access, utility access, emergency vehicle access, and potential emergency evacuation egress. So yeah, we do feel that it's a valuable benefit. So single family residential property with access only is going to get 1 benefit point. And we just saw the calculation to arrive at the dollars per benefit point. So here, the properties along Beach Drive would be assessed approximately $125 per year for the assessment. Moving to the center column, a single family residential property that's in the flats or subject to the both the flood mitigation improvements and access. Very straightforward, as we talked earlier. The highest elevation is going to get 1 point, the next elevation 1.5, the lowest elevation 2 points in total. Added together with the 1 point in access, you're going to end up with somewhere between 2 and 3 points, which is going to yield a range of assessments of approximately $250 to $375 per year. Now, there are non-residential properties in the flats, and so the only adjustment that's made there, the treatment of the flood mitigation risk benefits is identical to all parcels. The only difference is the measurement of the access. And so, for example, a commercial property is going to be generating a lot more trips and the need for access, and will therefore benefit more from the access benefit. And there's a number of measurements that go into calculating those trips. Suffice it to say that the range of assessments for non-residential properties within the flats area is in the range of $295 all the way up to $1,125. Next slide, please. So the material next steps in the process here is on June 29th. We are calendared for the Board of Supervisors agenda. And at that time, they'll be entertaining the resolution of intent to form this proposed maintenance assessment district. The next big date is July 9th, which is the deadline for the mailing of the notice of the public hearing, notice of assessment, and your assessment ballot. So sometime around that period, you should be checking your mail, looking out for your ballot package, and there'll be full instructions contained therein. And then that ballot and notice mailing will include all the details, relative to the next board action on August 24th, 2021, where there will be the public hearing. And then at the conclusion of the public hearing, the ballots will be tabulated. A determination will be made whether or not there's a majority protest. And if there is not a majority protest, the board will have the option to entertain a resolution to form the district. Next slide. And that's it. And we put up our contact information there for you all if you need to reach out to us directly. But we are available through CivicMic as well. So thank you very much. Sarah, if you have anything you want to add in conclusion to this, it's all yours.
Just briefly want to let everyone know that this presentation will be available on CivicMic. I think Danielle mentioned that at the beginning, but if there was any detail you wanted to go back to on the slides or what have you, we can certainly flip back there now if that's necessary, but the slides will be available on the website as well.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. We'll go ahead and go into questions now. Let me just go over some quick guidelines. We ask that everyone, one person speaks at a time, and please don't interrupt others. If you're on the phone, you'll hit *6 to unmute. Please say your last name. After I read through these, I'll ask for questions. Say your last name and the name that I hear, that's who I'll call on. Please express your views rather than speaking for others. Listen carefully, remain open-minded, and please no personal attacks. So with that, we'll go ahead and take some questions.
Hello, Johnson.
Johnson, okay, go ahead.
I got a few things here. I'm over on Treasure Island Drive. With the initial costs, if there's any overruns in getting this project completed, is there some type of mechanism to cover that without being assessed for that?
Kent, did you want to take that one?
So the short answer is no on that one. It's already going to be very tight for us to cover the local match on this project. There's quite a bit of funds that that the grant agencies will not cover, and it's going to come pretty close to depleting all of our costs there. So we're still looking at a couple areas where we might be able to have some contingencies in there, but I don't foresee a mechanism where we would be able to use any additional funds and then apply it to the annual assessment.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had is that, you know, with the high tides, storm events, what kind of safety factors being built into these pump stations or these pipes to make sure that we're not still going to have the same thing that we've been having for a number of years?
David, can you answer that one?
Yeah, the pump station itself is designed for up to the 10-year rainfall storm event. And so many events are obviously a lot smaller than that. And a lot of your flooding comes from annual or sub-annual events. But the county standard is to provide drainage infrastructure up through a 10-year rainstorm, and the pump stations will do that. You do have other sources of flooding possible for your neighborhood. They come from the creek water coming out of its channel banks. That doesn't really happen until after a 10-year storm. So that's not related to the pump station or the kinds of ponding that you receive now. And the other kind of event you get is wave intrusion from large surge events on the beach. The pump station has some capability of dealing with wave intrusion. So if you have a rainfall event that is less than a 10-year event occurring, then you have excess capacity with the pumps to take saltwater intrusion from waves. If you happen to have a 10-year event simultaneously, 10-year rainfall along with wave intrusion, then there is not additional capacity to deal with the added water from waves.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me how many 10-year events that we've had that would exceed this in the last?
Well, the terminology 10-year event refers to a probability of the event happening on average every 10 years. Mm-hmm. So,
well, we've had a considerable amount of flooding here.
Yeah, you can have in this particular neighborhood, you can have flooding multiple times per year. It's not a problem that is directly related to the size of the rainfall that's occurring. You simply have no possible discharge of the waters that are collecting under certain conditions. So when the creek mouth is blocked, you have no outlet. Right. When the creek mouth is open, you have a partial outlet. That doesn't work very well. The pump station will be disconnecting from the creek system altogether, and it will be, taking discharge to a new location that's not connected to the creek. So the creek's behavior will, in the future, not be related to how the neighborhood drains.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I have is, what type of backup do you have for power losses? We've had a lot of power PG&E shutdowns. How are you going to mitigate
there
that?
is a plan. Primary power will be from PG&E. but there is going to be the ability to bring a backup generator on a trailer and plug it into receptacles there, and that would be a diesel engine capable of running the pumps.
Okay, would that be something that you would have on actually in your maintenance yards, or would that be something that would have to be brought in from out of area?
We would have it. We would own it.
Okay.
It's paid.
All right.
It's paid for by the grant funding.
Okay.
But it is portable and it is on a trailer.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the answers.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for those questions. Next person. Any other questions?
Yes, Kenny.
Yes, Kenny, go ahead.
I have a few questions. The first one is, how was it determined that this is a special benefit to us in this neighborhood when, for instance, the properties along Beach Drive are mostly vacation rentals? We have a hotel with, you know, dozens or scores of rooms in the area, and many of the homes are vacation rentals. So I'd like to know how it was arrived at that this benefits only us, and I'd like to know where are there other special benefit districts in Santa Cruz County?
Okay, great. Sarah or Greg?
I'll speak to the special benefit, and that is all of those parcels you mentioned are being assessed. They're being charged for their special benefit. So those parcels along Beach Drive are being charged for the access as well as the hotel, and all of the parcels there within the boundary that you see on the CivicMic website in the Flats area. So those parcels are all being assessed because they do receive special benefit from these improvements. We also recognize that there is some general benefit. There may be folks who are entering the area who are not arriving at the hotel, not arriving at a restaurant in the area, not arriving to park at the parking lot and go to the beach, who may be coming into the district and therefore benefiting from the fact that there is this flood risk mitigation and so forth occurring. And that's where we derive the general benefit, and the properties within the assessment district are not charged. That was the credit basically, or the reduction in the amount that is being assessed to properties, is recognizing those folks who are coming in from outside and maybe not in relationship to property within the district. So I'll pause there and just make sure that answered that first question for you.
No, it didn't. You said that the properties along Beach Drive get 1 point for access because they're residential, but most of them are vacation rental, which would seem to me to be more commercial than residential.
We rely on the assessor data to determine property use and land use, and those properties are all classified as residential property. Just like any other residential property in the district may have visitors coming and going, or a business may have patrons coming and going, that is, whether that property is rented or owner occupied or what have you, is not part of the analysis in determining the special benefit.
And then the second question was, what other special benefit districts are there in Santa Cruz County?
Let's see. I don't know, Rachel or Kent, if you're aware of any specifically. I know that we work with assessment districts and in agencies that have assessment districts all across the state. I'm not specifically familiar with any that might be in Santa Cruz County.
So it's just us?
So we have some, I'd have to go back and look because I wasn't involved in some of the earlier formations, but we have some sanitation, which is like the sewer lines, county service areas, where people are assessed on their special benefits. And we're in the process of forming one down the La Selva Beach area as well. So there are certain areas where these communities have to basically assess themselves for the maintenance of their sewer systems, and there's also areas where they have to do that for like a road CSA or something like that. So there are other very similar examples in the county.
Yeah, Kent, this is Zach Friend. Just to answer that question, there are a lot in our district alone. I mean, there are road special districts. There's CSA 48, which is the largest one, which deals with fire protection. There's CSA 3 and Seascape, which deals with roads, medians, trash collection, and some of the beach maintenance in that area. There are, I mean, I can think of, I mean, at least a dozen in our district alone, and a number of others throughout the county. This is not, in and of itself, the mechanism is not a unique mechanism.
And there are other agencies within the county that have their own assessment districts. So various cities within the county may, you know, that are separate, you know, they're levied by the city themselves, but there are other, both assessment districts, community facilities districts, various other types of funding mechanisms within other agencies as well.
I have two more questions. What will the new pump station look like, since it's going to be in a very prominent part near the beach?
David, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll try. Without a diagram or a picture, it will be hard to describe, but they said that there's directly across from the Pixie Deli and the corner lot that has a real estate office. On the other side of Venetian, there's a vegetated embankment between Venetian and Rio Del Mar Boulevard. And that embankment that has no housing on it does not contain any residential lots. It just happens to be part of the county's right-of-way. And so it was available for this project. And the pump station will be built primarily in that embankment. So a large part of it is below ground, and a portion of it is above ground from the viewpoint of Venetian. If you were standing on Venetian and looking towards it, you would see concrete vault structures above ground. But on the Rio Del Mar Boulevard side, they do not project, the concrete only projects about 6 to 8 inches above the ground, and is topped with a railing. And the railing is for safety purposes. And that railing would look something similar to the railing that is along the pedestrian bridge or Aptos Creek Channel.
Thank you, David. Peggy, I'm going to go ahead and move to someone else for a question, and then we'll come back to you. If we want to keep it to one question per person, unless it's a follow-up to your previous question, that way, you know, we make sure to answer, to speak with as many people as possible. Is that okay with you, Peggy? I think you went on mute, so I think,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. EP, I believe you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. How, what's the noise level going to be like from the pump station? And can you explain more about where it's going to be draining onto the beach? Because we have kind of a river on the beach. And so I was confused about how that might affect the beach itself. Thanks.
David, is that you?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay, thank you.
So on the noise issue, this was brought up during our permitting process by the Coastal Commission. And the information that we could gather from that and our experience with other pump stations, particularly sanitation pump stations. The pumps are submersible, they're underground in a vault, submerged underwater. So the amount of noise that you would hear above ground standing on the street is negligible to none. Some people may have heard noise from the sanitation pump station, but it has other equipment that's on the exterior of the building. And this stormwater pump station doesn't have that equipment. So it just has the pumps and their motors submerged underwater in a vault. There is some flowing water sounds that may come from gravity discharge of the water. And it would be occurring during, rainfall, during traffic going through the wet streets, and I think it would be found to be not noisier than that background noise. And as far as your second part of your question, at the beach, you talked about a river on the beach. I assume you're meaning the meandering of the Aptos Creek channel. We're disconnecting from that creek channel, and so the behavior of the creek channel is no longer related to our project. We're not discharging into the creek. We won't be affecting the behavior of the creek channel. It will continue to meander as it has in the past, and it does create other problems unassociated with our stormwater pumps. But we have a new discharge outfall on the beach in a area of the beach that over an 80-year period is proven to be stable. And it's also stable enough to support vegetation for many, many decades. So we believe that that discharge point will prove to be ideal compared to other choices we might have made.
Okay, thank you, David. We'll go ahead and go next with Ed Gilbert. Okay. Doesn't sound like Ed is, we can hear you, Ed. So was...
Mike Santoro, can you hear me?
Sure, Mike, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I live on Hayline Road, and we locals around here watched the, quote, meandering, end quote, of the Aptos Creek this past year almost take out the bathroom at the park. And it appears there would be no reason why it wouldn't take out the pump station, because the county, assuming it is a county responsibility, failed to clear out the mouth of the creek. We believe a lot of the drainage problems would be solved if the creek were drained properly so that those pipes could work. You alluded to the fact that the one lower pipe often gets clogged up with sand. I understand there's environmental issues, but it appears that there are other alternatives. I'm very much opposed to this project. I believe that this storm drain problem should be paid out of the ample property taxes that we locals pay and not out of a special assessment district. I believe your assessments are arbitrary. Looking at the map, I'm assessed. I've never been flooded or threatened to be flooded by the drains on Aptos Beach Drive. But yet I'm going to be assessed the same amount, if I'm reading the map correctly, as that little drugstore or store on the corner of Esplanade and Aptos Beach Drive. They obviously are very much impacted by the flooding there, but yet why are we paying the same when we've never had a problem at our end by Moosehead? Also, it appears that this boundary is arbitrary. Homes up Aptos Beach Drive, which greatly impact the amount of water that we receive down here in the flats, are not even included in the district. And as we all know, the $115,000 in costs, that's a starting point. You know, and we know that those costs are going to go up every year in perpetuity, and we're going to simply get a property tax bill and we'll have no say in it after that. With all of this being said, my question is, since this vote is basically left to the property owners, can someone like myself get a list of all the mailing addresses of all the property owners in this special assessment district so that we can present some counter arguments?
So I guess two things there. Sarah or Greg, do you want to respond to one about releasing the property address information? You can see the information on the map as far as who is included in the boundaries. So mailing addresses, I don't believe can be released, but Sarah may have more information on that.
My comment would be, I believe they're public record, but it would be a big process to go down to the assessor's office and try and garnish up all of the mailing addresses of all the registered property owners in that assessment district. The opposition, me, you folks have been able to present all the benefits you think that this is going to give this area, and no one has talked to the detriment. And I think that someone, and I think I'm not the only person, but I think that we should be allowed a chance to present some of the opposing comments.
I could speak to that, Koenig, on Lake Court.
There are some questions there that I wanted to respond to, if I could, please. There was mention about the assessment amount being a starting point, and I did want to say that the annual escalation of the rate is limited to 2.5% per year. So that is the maximum percentage by which that annual assessment may increase according to the engineer's report. So there is no ability for the county to increase rates beyond that 2.5% on an annual basis. So that was the first question. The second was around the release of mailing addresses. There are some limitations to how that data can be provided. And while you can get some of that information by going down to the assessor's office, for us to compile the information and provide a list to a member of the public is something we would need legal counsel approval for. So we can certainly, review that issue, but it's something we need to receive legal guidance on to respect everyone's privacy and make sure that we are not afoul of any issues in that regard.
And Sarah,
So
I'll add to that real quick that I'll put my email in the chat and I'll look into that issue. If you want to email me, and then we can start a dialogue, because that way I can get back to you whether or not that's feasible, and if possible, I can provide you that list. So I'll put my name in the chat, and then if you want to email me, we can work on that.
Kent, I have your email address. We have already corresponded on this. I just want to go on record as making that request so that if you have to run it by legal counsel, that we get a response. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Paul M. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
You are unmuted. There you go.
There we go. My name is Shirley Al, and wife of Paul Matlock, and we're the owners of the property at the corner of Beach Road and Benicia, the real estate office property. Question is that you mentioned that the votes are weighted. So if you send out ballots, if there's 51% that are opposed to it, will that stop the project? And number two, you mentioned that the publicly owned property would also be assessed. Will they get to vote in on this ballot?
So yes to both of your questions. Publicly owned property, because they are being assessed, they do have, they will be mailed an assessment ballot so that they may participate in the ballot proceeding. With regard to your first question, we do tabulate again based on the ballots that are received, so that when we add up the dollar amount of the ballots that are in favor and the dollar amount of the ballots that are in opposition, that's how we make our comparison. So that's exactly right. Either on the approval side or the opposition side, it is 50% plus one, basically. So that's the criteria we're looking at.
Is that true of only 10 people?
Okay, so you've answered that. So another question, I guess, concerns about the cost of the project. And I understand that it's a grant, but we've owned that property for at least 40 years, and we've never been impacted as far as the building itself with flooding. So for me, we will probably be in the higher assessment and it is just a real estate office. There's not a lot of foot traffic in there, and just very concerned about it because 2.5% doesn't sound like much, but over time, if you're at the higher assessment level, it will amount to a lot of money over the years.
Okay, thank you. I think that was more of a general comment. Please visit civicmic.com so you can see your exact assessment there and then calculate what it will be with the inflator as well.
That's the question of how you can, if we object to it, is there a process if we oppose what the assessment value is?
You would complete your assessment ballot. I mean, if you don't agree with the assessment, then you would mark your ballot in opposition and return your assessment ballot.
I'm Paul Matlock. I just have two questions and then I'll turn it over. But one, where the outfall system is going to be now, that's pretty much going to turn that section of beach into toxic waste, right? Because the gasoline and the oil that goes in with the water is going to affect the surrounding area. So you want to keep the kids out of there. The old way of going into the creek, I understand, is feeble, but has anybody considered just putting a shallow storm drain down Marina or Stevens with a high outflow capability? And if you couldn't quite get the grade, you could pump it up at that point and spray it in the river. Has anybody considered that?
David or Kent?
David has looked at various options, so I'll turn it over to David.
Well, yeah, quite some time ago, we did look at the possibility of discharging to the creek. For a variety of reasons, that hasn't been viewed as the preferred way of getting rid of the water. Part of that comes from endangered species of fish that reside in the creek. Part of it is because the county doesn't own the creek channel. That's owned by the state of California, state parks, which state parks gave up their permit for breaching the creek and no longer maintains the creek channel open and free to flow. They're managing it more for some of the environmental benefits. And we expect that type of management approach to continue from their mandates. So continuing to discharge to the creek is problematic because the creek's water surface elevations are too high. And you don't have good hydraulic performance, and along with the other issues that I already mentioned.
Yeah, but it would flow out there. In fact, it does during a storm. But so you're saying that the fish in the creek are more important than the children on the beach?
Well, I don't make that decision. It's a reality that we can't get a permit to change the creek's configuration. And again, not being a property owner is a major problem.
All right, well, thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. I see that there's another hand up, but is there anyone else on the phone that would like to say their name that has a question?
I'm on video, Michael Vane.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to this is probably replowing ground from a ways back, but I'd like to understand why is it that this public road and the maintenance of the road to keep it clear because it's flooding, why is that not part of the county's budget? I don't understand why we're being turned into a homeowners association to maintain our own road.
Kent, do you maybe have the answer to that question?
So I think it goes back to what Sarah and Greg were talking about as far as the special benefit and the general benefit. So the engineer's report that they looked at determined what the general benefit was, which is essentially to the roads, and then the special benefit, which is the essentially the parcels out there. So that it has been looked at by through the engineer's report.
You're not answering the question. Roads everywhere have general and special benefits. I can make that argument about any homeowners in any location in any county. Why is this one being leveraged against the property owners of this particular district? There's a bridge that goes out all the time over on Valencia, for example. Are only the people who use that bridge levied an assessment to repair the bridge? So I'm to a larger question of why this wasn't just included in the operations and maintenance of the county. We got a whole grant for the thing from various other sources that didn't come from the property owners. And so you've chosen this part of the funding to have to come from the property owners. It doesn't make sense to me.
So I guess the quick answer to that is there isn't enough funding in the county for public works, for all the roads in the county. The county is, it's one of the poorest counties in the state when it comes to the money we get from Prop 13. Due to Prop 13 to property taxes, we get about 13 cents on the dollar back, which is, I think we're in the bottom 7 of the 58 counties. So there just isn't a lot of money, and there isn't a funding source to do this, to pay for this ongoing maintenance. So that's why we're putting it out to the residents in the area that can really benefit from this project. If the residents decide that it's not worth it to pay this amount, then you've spoken, and we understand that. But the reality is that there just isn't a funding source for this project that the county has.
Thank you,
Thank
Kent. We'll go with, we're getting close on time here, but we'll go with 3 Margaret Rosa. You have your hand up. Did you have a question?
So I echo Mike's concerns about the fact that the general benefit isn't being extended to the properties that are in the higher elevations whose runoff comes down into our neighborhood. I'd argue that the general benefit of them having poorly designed drainage in their neighborhood is affecting us, and we're the ones that have to pay the brunt of the price. And also, I was wondering why, my question is, who determines what is general benefit? Does it only have to do with egress, with traffic and emergency access, or can general benefit also refer to, other aspects of being a property owner?
Greg or Sarah?
The general benefit is determined by the assessment engineer. And so that is the job of the assessment engineer to determine what is special benefit and what is general benefit. So that's how the determination is made. And, we look at a variety of factors and how the improvements that are being serviced affect the neighborhood and the property within the neighborhood in making that analysis. So, we have looked at the peripheral parcels to calculate the general benefit and account for, again, those folks who may be entering the district who are not related to property within the district. So Greg mentioned the trip generation aspect. If I have come from out of state visiting your wonderful community, and I am patronizing a restaurant in your community, because I'm going to that particular restaurant, that restaurant is receiving benefit based on that trip generation. So my visit to that restaurant is captured in the assessment to that particular parcel in relationship to the other parcels. If I am visiting your community and I am not, maybe I'm finding some street parking somewhere and walking through to the beach, I'm not specifically patronizing a property within the district. And so that's going to be the general benefit. So those are the factors that we're weighing. We're looking at the the specifics of the individual parcels within the district and how the flooding interacts with those parcels, how the system is designed to mitigate the flood risk, as well as the access to property within the district.
Thank you, Sarah. Greg, go ahead.
Yes, I'm on Lake Court, and I have to echo all of the negative, but the against people on this. I'm fully against this. I've been here since '98. There is no benefit to my family and I with this particular district. It does seem very arbitrary. My question is, what's the if it doesn't work and we still see flooding? What is our recourse then if this gets approved? I'm very uncomfortable with the expenditure and the costs with our district not having this much money. This doesn't seem to be a very fiscally responsible spend.
David, I guess the question is, any guarantees on how well, or can you share any studies on the performance of the pump station?
I can only address maybe a portion of that question, and that is, will the system work? And I would tell you that it will. I mean, it's pumps and their operation are a well-known engineering practice. You have sewage pump stations in your neighborhood, and they work 99.9% of the time. This pump station, even though it's a stormwater pump station, it will be actually maintained by our sanitation personnel. If that helps raise your confidence on the skill level of the personnel who will be maintaining it.
It doesn't, mainly because my physical experience living here since '98 in this particular neighborhood, that there's been efforts to help and improve and everything else, and flooding moves around. In fact, flooding is worse on our street now than it was prior to some works that you were doing in the sewer areas down there as it was. So to me, the benefits of the work I've seen haven't been there, and I would much rather see this money be worked on improving our roads, because our roads are horrible. And if that's the result of the water, well, then, oh, well, I'd still rather see that money put towards the roads. That's just my assessment. I'm definitely 100% against, and we'll walk the neighborhood for this.
Okay. Some of what you're saying is you're comparing the past performance of the drainage system to what the future will be. And what I'm telling you is that the past is not illustrative. There have been no improvements in the past on this drainage system. So there's no effort been made that has failed on drainage. I said that it was the sewer system I was making the comparison to, that the maintenance staff from our sanitation district would be maintaining this stormwater pump. And of course, the facility will be all new, a new effort at drainage. So probably 98% of the pipe work that is out there was installed in 1926. And it has not been upgraded since then. So on Lake Court, particularly, you said you were on Lake Court, there has been an extension of drainage pipes up the length of Lake Court. But downstream of you, it ties into the existing neighborhood and to the creek channel, which is non-functional. So even though you have a slightly newer pipe system on Lake Court, it connects to a system that was not functional. And that system has been degrading progressively over time.
Copy that.
So that's your experience.
Just because that work actually caused more flooding on our street. So it's actually worse, which maybe this will mitigate, maybe it won't. I don't have a lot of confidence just because of that. Again, my personal opinion, I will be against this. I'm just stating that out loud for the record.
Thank you, Greg. We are seeing some people drop off. We're right about just a little over our hour limit here. Let's go ahead and take a couple more questions. We'll take a couple more questions and then we'll close out this meeting. But I do want to say, I know Kent mentioned this before, but the county does not have the ability to form this district, this assessment district, without approval from property owners. So they are bringing this opportunity to you to utilize the grant funding that's available and asking the community if this is something that they want to support. So that's perfectly fine, Greg, you know, saying that you don't support it. That's what the county is doing here. That's why we're having these meetings. They want to hear from the community to see if this is something you want to support or not. So thank you for that. Rachel, you had a comment?
Yeah, I had a comment responding to partial what Greg is saying. Oh, sorry. And I guess I'm unmuted. Okay. When Greg, you're saying put the money toward improving the road, FEMA is not interested in improving the road. They will not fund something to improve the road. FEMA saw the problem we have there, and that's our only opportunity for us to fix the problem. If we turn away FEMA's money, we will have no other opportunity to fix the flooding in the area, period. Because for now, spending already, they paid for design and they're gonna pay for construction. And if we turn this money away, we will not even attempt to get more money because they will just laugh at us. So that's our only opportunity to do something there. And it's been in the works. The work for getting the grant, it's been very, very extensive, and it's been numerous years. We started the design from 2015, and we're at it now for the construction. So it's been a lot of work to secure the money. And again, this is our only opportunity to do it. So, and you have the opportunity to say yes or no, but if the answer is no, we will have no other opportunity to fix the issue in the future.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Fred Perez. I don't know if I can be heard or not. Can I?
Yes,
Am I heard?
Fred. Yes, go
can
ahead.
Yeah, I live on Bennett Road near the Moosehead end of it. And quite frankly, if I come down from Safeway and turn on Moosehead, I don't have any water to go through, and I'm being assessed as though I'm living there on Aptos Beach. So that's a concern, and I get we got to assess everybody as fairly as possible. I've been down here since '82. My biggest question is, are we giving up on the fact that the river cannot be utilized to be the natural outflow of this problem? Because my mother-in-law has a home up on Shoreview, and there's a large drain that comes down through the front of her property down that hill. If that water was diverted down Treasure Island and over to the creek as a natural flow out, would that be considered an alternative to putting in a pump station, which requires, I get it, maintenance? That would be, to me, a fix that would deload the lower end and very possibly allow us to maybe update the storm drain and pay for it all at once and not have this ongoing annual expense that we know is going to increase over time. Now, I get nobody wants to take on the state. The state doesn't want to deal with the river anymore. It's quite difficult to get them to react when I can look out my window and see the water level up about a foot from going over. I've called them. 3 days it took them to get anybody out there to cut the hole through, and they did it. They opened it up. They didn't say, oh, poor goby fish. They did it. I don't know what caused them to do it then that wouldn't have caused them just to do it annually. We're not going to lose all the gobies. But has anybody looked at that as an alternative to draining the flats, punching water in at a different location up on the river?
David?
Yeah, I can answer some of that. Where we have had opportunity to drain some of the drainage area into the creek, that has been done in the past. Rachel Fatui, who's here speaking with us, actually did one of those designs herself, and it picks up water higher up on the bluff side, on the side of the bluff, takes that water down a road, puts it into storm drains, and takes it to a point a little above the concrete bridge that you all drive across when you come into the neighborhood. And that is taken away some of the water that would otherwise have to be pumped. This project itself, similarly, is picking up all the water that comes down Rio Del Mar Boulevard. It's about 30% of the drainage. And it is being picked up and taken out by gravity drainage to the same outfall as the pump, but this water is not being pumped. We are catching it before it reaches the neighborhood, and it will not have to be pumped, but it is part of the project. Other areas, like you're talking about on Bennett or any of these little side streets next to the creek channel, you can't put a pipe out to the creek and drain the flats because the elevations that the creek obtains prevent that. The only way you could do that, you can't do that with a gravity pipe unless you seal that gravity pipe up and collect the water at high elevation. And there are very few points at which you can successfully do that. Rio Del Mar Boulevard is one of them where we have done it or will be doing it if we do this project. And Rachel's project was another spot. But if your inlets are in the flats and open to the air, you cannot generate any gravity pressure. And so you cannot discharge into a high creek channel. The only way you could discharge into a high creek channel is with a pump system. You could force water into the creek channel if you had a pump behind it. But you're talking about the same system, a pumped system. So if you're going to a pumped system, you're better off not connecting to the creek at all and having an alternate discharge point. And that's what this project is proposing.
Would that condition be when the creek level is above the pipe, that you would be required to have the pipe to force the water into the creek versus a pipe above the water line in the creek? Would that not gravity feed into the river? Like the one that's down at the Sfrd now that drains into the creek there when the tide's down or the river's down? I just trying to understand if you're saying that you need a pump to push that water down that hill into that creek. If that pipe's above the water line in the creek, will it not drain without a pump if it's going down?
Well, I'll try to explain it with some numbers. So probably an average elevation of the flats along Aptos Beach Drive is about 9.5 or 10 feet elevation. And the creek channel, either the water surface, when there's a lot of flow, and the creek is high, or it could just be because the tide and the surf are high and there's a sandbar and there's not much flow in the creek. But either way, there's a high water surface. That high water surface comes up to the same 9.5 feet. I have seen the water from the creek channel reverse flow through the pipe system and bubble up out of the grates into the neighborhood. So when you have that condition present, which would be frequently enough to be unreliable, you cannot gravity discharge from an elevation of the low-lying flats. You would have to have a pressure source, and your only pressure source is either a pump or a closed pipe with the upper end way up on the bluff. You need at least 6 to 10 feet of additional elevation, depending on how much friction losses you have through your pipe.
Thank you for that, David. Let's move on to our final question. I'm sorry we have to wrap this up, but again, if you have additional questions after this meeting, reach out to us through civicmic.com, and we will work with the county to get answers to your questions and share them on our webpage so the entire community can see your questions and responses. Stacy, we'll go ahead and...
Perry on Marina. How about Perry on Marina? Can I ask a question?
I had Stacy here that I had said I was going to go to, but I don't know if she's taking it off mute. Stacy?
Hi, my question's in the chat. So if you'd like to read it out loud to everyone, and then the other person could ask her question, it's fine. I think I kind of, I said I added out, I kind of repeated some of the other things that were said, but I really believe this should be something that the county pays for. I live on Treasure Island Drive as well, and I think it's unfair that this is the first and only public discussion about this, that we've only gotten this chance to talk about this. This pump decision should have been more of our group decision if we're the ones who have to pay for it. If we had a neighborhood association, we probably would have all met and had an engineer and actually gone through the process of deciding what would be the best plan. You guys already did all this research without our okay, and then you're telling us that somehow we're supposed to pay for it. So I feel like we need another chance to kind of do our own research. And like everyone's saying, there's a lot of other options. I think you need to give us more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I do have your question. It says in the past when Seascape had an issue, I guess past when Seascape had an issue, they waste the waste.
That's not my question. Sorry.
Okay, so then I don't see your question in the chat. I'm sorry.
I have your question.
Oh, it's to Biana.
Okay,
I guess.
go ahead,
Yeah,
Biana.
sorry.
There was one other one there.
Yeah, it says, how can you expect us to decide on this major construction and specific pump without proper time and analysis to decide on the specific pump as the solution?
I don't know. I think that I can just answer Stacy that we have as much information as we can out on CivicMic.com. Please spend some time reading through that information, ask questions, use this time in between now and when the ballots are sent out, or as soon as possible, read the information there and come back to the county with any questions that you have so we can share all of that with the community. And I think the request is always that there's more time. Definitely, that's always beneficial, but we are now at the position that we're at, and we can utilize these resources we have to get as many questions answered as possible for you. So please feel free to reach out to me. As I said before, you can visit CivicMic.com and scroll to the bottom, CivicMic.com/SCC. Scroll to the bottom and you can click the link directly there to email a question. You can email me directly at dwood, so DWOOD @CivicMic.com. That's CIVIC.com. The goal here for the county is to make sure that we hear the community's voice, and we do think it's important to hear from all of you and share your concerns with the rest of the community. If you are interested in being part of a group that reaches out to individuals that may not have been here tonight, or would like to help share information, factual data with your community, please send me your email information and we will get a group together that works with the county to share as much information as we can with the community, because as you mentioned, it's a short time frame, and we need to really focus on reaching as many individuals as possible at this point. So with
Perry
that,
and Marina didn't get to ask a question. So
yeah, I'm trying to wrap up this. We'll go ahead and take your question as the very last one, and then I'm sorry, but unfortunately we cannot take any more. Like I said, we'll have to use some of the other resources. So go ahead, Perry.
yeah, just briefly. So on Marina, this is a residential street, but it's being used by the county and everyone under the sun as a truck route. And I assume when this work starts, if it gets passed, heavy trucks are going to be on our street some more. And the residents here have requested this road be worked on for like 3 years. So that's a housekeeping issue. And the other housekeeping issue is that people ask why, when the roads are flooded, are just joyriders allowed to go up and down the flooded roads and slosh water into properties. So is this a couple housekeeping things I would like somebody to pay attention to at some point?
Kent, do you want to comment on that before we close out the meeting? Anything that you'd like to say?
I mean, those are things that we'll consider, and I'll certainly talk with our roads folks about their plans for upgrading the roads out there. I mean, and then as far as the joyriders out there, I mean, Yeah, maybe something that Supervisor Friend can talk about as well, but it's really hard to, you'd almost have to have sheriffs out there on both ends, you know, to make sure that people aren't out there. And I'm not sure that that's the best use of our resources for our sheriffs out there.
Okay, thank you.
I might interject for one moment.
Sure, David.
Two people have brought up the subject about the condition of the roads and the pavement condition. Some wanting money spent there, and also just pointing out that it's bad. But a lot of the accelerated deterioration of the roads comes from the fact that they are underwater so often and still trafficked. With the project installed, future improvements on the roads will be a lot longer lasting. People should keep that in mind, that there are improvements to the road system from that project.
But Marina, which is just residential, shouldn't be like a truck route, and the county does it, and there are a lot of heavy trucks on this road, and it's amazingly beat up, and it's arbitrary because the other part of Marina has been worked on, and the road by the hotel has been worked on, so it's kind of arbitrary. So I'm just hoping somebody will take a look at that again sometime.
Thank you. We'll take those comments, and I'm sure Kent and Zach will pass those along to the appropriate people. And if we have any responses to share with you on CivicMic, we'll do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for staying with us tonight. I know a number of people have dropped off. If you'd like to rewatch this or share this with any of your neighbors, this call, it will be posted to civicmic.com. We really thank you for your time, and please send any questions in that you have. We appreciate all of you being here tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.